Okay, perfect, awesome. Yeah, as she said, my name is Elsa Bucholz. I work for the Oregon State University Extension Service, and I did this evaluation as part of my undergraduate thesis project. Okay, is it good? Yeah. Okay, perfect. So just a little bit about me. So I just graduated last term. I have a major in public health and a minor in environmental and occupational health. And I started with the OSU Extension Service last summer as an intern. And that's kind of how this project grew. I actually just got hired as the educational program assistant as a temp. So I kind of made this presentation just for a more general audience, so I bet a lot of you are very familiar with the Extension Service in general. We do outreach and education is kind of our whole thing. We try to vary our programs from county to county, community to community, just because everyone's needs are slightly different. And so we just try to kind of take stake of the different priorities of communities and stakeholders in our area. So here's a map of all of our counties. I thought it was very interesting seeing all of your guys' maps so far because a lot of people out here seem to have a lot of very, very small counties, and we have these kind of 36 giant counties. Ours specifically, if you see the little orange triangle there, that is the OSU campus, and that is also Benton County, and we specifically are based out of that county. Our program, the Groundwater Protection Program, is not a statewide program. We're trying to make it a statewide program, but it's not there yet. But we do outreach in all of the surrounding counties. So it's just like a few of us working in a program in Benton County. We don't work on campus. We're in an office like off campus, but we work in the same county as the OSU is based in. And so we serve all of the surrounding counties. And yeah, that is our reach. Once again, you guys probably are very aware of the importance of groundwater, but my slide's a little messed up there. But so 23% of all Oregonians, which is about 1 million residents, they rely on groundwater for their drinking water, and about 90% of rural residents. So it's a very important issue in Oregon to make sure that people have groundwater that they can drink. So the rules for domestic well use in Oregon are probably a little different than some of your guys's. Mostly for domestic purposes like showering, laundry, drinking. And then you can also use it to up to a ½ acre of irrigation and non-commercial use, including like garden, lawn, pasture, as well as like livestock watering. And then kind of everyone has said, the records on wells in Oregon aren't the most reliable. So these are like kind of just rough estimates, but we'll just say roughly about 350,000 active domestic wells statewide. But again, a lot of these, there's about 3,500, 3,800 wells that are added each year. This is a little bit of a breakdown per county. And then there's also very few wells that are listed as abandoned or properly decommissioned. So it makes those numbers kind of hard to gauge. This is kind of a good little graphic on all of the different agencies and organizations that are involved in groundwater in Oregon. It makes it a little bit difficult sometimes for homeowners then, because there's a lot of different people with a lot of different hands in groundwater and well water. One important thing to note is that most of these, or all of these organizations except for the Extension Service, do have some sort of regulatory component. So that is something that is very individual to us and ends up being very important in our work, because we don't have that kind of regulatory element. It can kind of eliminate some of the mistrust that we see sometimes when we go out into the community. Sometimes people are a little bit hesitant to talk to people if they think that they're going to come in and try to stop them from using their water or make them put on any sort of filtration or anything like that. This is just some of the groundwater quality concern areas in Oregon. This was made by the Oregon Water Resources Department. And as you can see, in the area that we're located in, there's a pretty good swatch of red there. A lot of the gray areas, there doesn't necessarily mean that there's no kind of concerns there, but a lot of those are the more mountainous regions, fewer people living in there, less data there. There are 3 kind of specific groundwater management areas that we talk about, when it comes to Oregon. We specifically focus on the Southern Willamette Valley Groundwater Management Area. This was voluntarily declared because of its high nitrate levels. And as you can see, Corvallis, there we're located is at the top there. And so we do a lot of outreach work in this area. Once again, all of you guys are probably very aware of nitrate. This is something that we focus a lot on when we're talking with people, just because it can be a good indicator as well of potentially other issues. When we talk to people, we mostly say like failing septic systems, misuse of fertilizers, uncovered manure piles. That's kind of what we talk to people about being the potential causes of nitrate. And so if people do have nitrate present, it's a good indicator to kind of, look around, see what's up. It might not be, them, but it could be someone around them, because a lot of these aquifers are, very large and stretch over a large area. And so we also talk about the safe level of nitrate in water. The EPA health standard is 10 milligrams per liter, but when we talk to people, that's a community water system level, and a lot of these people are living on these properties for long periods of time, so that's safe up to a year. But if you're living on this land for like a long period of time, a lot of people I talk to will be like, oh, I've been living here for 25 years, 50 years, So if you're living on this land for a really long time and you're gonna be drinking this water the whole time, not gonna be super safe if it's at 10 milligrams per liter. This is just from one of our publications. We just, show people little diagrams of, potential health issues when it comes to nitrate, including, blue baby syndrome, of course. And then a lot of what we do in this program is we do nitrate screenings. That's how I started out when I was an intern over the summer. We go to farmers markets, fairs, other stuff in a lot of different counties. There isn't a ton of us, so we usually just go to like one farmers market at per summer. We don't usually go to like multiple places or one place multiple times. Just to kind of try to get the most reach we can. And yeah, when we talk to people, we say like anything above 3 parts per million is usually when we start to talk to them about potential, risks and things that they could install. And this kind of is what I was just talking about. These are some pictures from, we set up a little booth. We have all these publications. We're there to talk to people. We can provide them with different resources. A lot of the, publications that we draw from are probably publications that you guys made as well. And we have this little, you can see over here, this is our little like nitrate screening kit. It's really quick, takes like 5 to 7 minutes. It just just changes color, gives us like a good range so we can kind of tell people if they're in an area like of concern or not. This is when I made this presentation, we were at like the beginning of this testing program, but now we're actually at the very end. I think we just, as of yesterday, completed our last test in 2 of our counties. I think one of our counties, we have a couple more tests, but we're piloting this program. We're actually going to people's homes, collecting a water sample. We're walking them through the process of collecting a water sample. We're going out to their wellhead, doing like a quick little wellhead inspection, giving them some publications, some information. And then as part of this, we call it no cost well water testing. It is free, but the only cost is like their time, because they are supposed to attend an educational class that we teach on wells, septics, and like disaster preparedness. So there's that educational and outreach component. This is our current outreach model. This includes some of the stuff I was just talking about. We can see the expanded testing that I was just talking about at the top, nitrate screenings that I was also just talking about. And then these workshops are kind of what my evaluation was originally about. We do living with your well and living with your septic class, and like a combination of the two. So we're doing that as part of our new program as well, but we have been teaching these classes for like a while. So we provide them in both in-person and like webinar format, trying to make it like super accessible. And then we do have a lot of media outreach that we do as well. We do a lot of postcard mailings, but we also join Facebook groups. If we're going to a specific farmer's market, we'll join like that, individual town's Facebook group and try to reach out to people that way. This is just a little screenshot from our Living with Your Domestic Well and Septic System class. And then going into my actual project that I did, I wanted to evaluate the OSU Extension Service Groundwater Protection Program outreach, specifically the Living with Your Well and Septic System classes. Wanted to look at kind of changes in well testing behaviors and septic maintenance, and look at people's confidence levels and barriers to actually taking action. I used a survey, which I sent out to people. I wanted to target people in kind of the 6 to 24 month range, people who had taken part in our class in that period of time. And I tried to do like a mixture of quantitative and qualitative questions and asking about well testing behaviors, septic system maintenance, confidence levels, any barriers that they reported, and behavior changes that they reported as well. Timeline. I started out there were, I think, 405 people that were in that certain time range that I sent information out to. A lot of them provide email, and so I sent out these invitations via email, and then the people whose emails bounced back, or people who didn't provide us an email, I sent them a postcard. And then I did like a little follow-up, an email to all the people who provided emails, and then a postcard to everyone who hadn't responded, just to try to, sometimes the visual is like very helpful for people. And then I sent out a final reminder via email, and then postcard to people who didn't provide us their email. Closed the survey, and then I also did, as part of this to try to kind of incentivize people to participate, we did have a OSU like merchandise little basket, and then as well as free well water testing. We had a little drawing at the end. In total, there were 90 people who responded. 57 of those were well owners, and 55 of those well owners also had septic systems. And then there were 33 septic-only participants. And in terms of household size, it ranged from about like 1 to 8 people. I was really interested in people's well testing behaviors. So I asked people their well testing before and after attending the class. So before the class, 48 people had tested their well at least once, while 9 people had never tested. And then after the class, about 23% of those people who had tested before retested. Unfortunately, none of the people who had never tested retested. It was a pretty small group. But the percentage of people who said that they plan to test in the future was pretty high. You can see it's that black bar there. So that was about 40% of the people who tested before, and 56% of the people who had never tested said that they plan to test again in the future. The common contaminants that were noted were nitrate, arsenic, and coliform bacteria. And then in terms of actions that people took, installing filtration system, consulting professionals, and then reviewing our educational materials were kind of the majority of those. And then I also wanted to look at septic system maintenance, because we kind of put those together since they definitely affect each other. 35 people said that they had tested with it, or had pumped their septic system within the last year, 38 within the last 1 to 5, 10 over 5 years ago. And then I also looked at after the class, and so 57% of people who had serviced their system in the last year plan to maintain it more frequently, with 32% of those who had done it in the last 1 to 5 years, and 60% of the people who had not serviced their system in over 5 years. So pretty high percentage of people who plan to maintain it more frequently. And then I also looked at different practices that people implemented as a result of attending these classes. And so kind of the top answer was avoiding specific materials like harsh chemicals, which is good because that's something that we highlight a lot in the class, as well as doing more regular inspections and pumping, and maintaining a clear drain field, which is another thing we focus on quite a bit. Not driving over it, not planting deep-rooted things in there. And then I also wanted to look at people's confidence levels. So I used a little smiley face rating to kind of try to capture how people are feeling. The majority of people reported pretty high confidence levels, and there were few that reported low confidence, and this is kind of the breakdown here. And so I broke it down into people who had tested their well previously, and then people who had never tested their well. As you can see, kind of a lot in the 4 to 5 smiley face range, very few in the lower levels, which is exactly what we like to see. And then this is for septic owners, broken down into within the past year, 1 to 5, more than 5. And same kind of spread here, where a lot of higher confidence and much less lower confidence. I also wanted to look at barriers to testing and maintenance. Surprisingly, a lot of people reported not having barriers, which is great. But of the people who reported having barriers, cost was, of course, a pretty high one. And so was lack of information. And then inconvenience and time constraints were lower. I did have another option on like all of these questions just to kind of see what else people would put in themselves. Some people, I think a couple people just said procrastination on their own part, which, makes sense. And then, I did also look at just general behavior change, high reporting of increased use of environmentally safe products, which is great. More documentation, also great. More regular inspections, and then discussing what they learned with friends and family, which is good. That's how a lot of people, learn about our program. A lot of people learn about proper well and septic system maintenance. I did look at some other studies as part of this evaluation. My findings did support kind of what everyone else has been saying. When people are out there doing this sort of work out in the community, it does often lead to action. So in the Virginia Household Water Quality Program study, they said that 70% of people took action after their clinic. And the most common action there was septic tank pumping at 52%, and then water treatment and additional testing as well. And then I also took a look at the Montana State University's Well Educated program. And according to their study, 44% improved water quality practices, which includes shock chlorination, changing water sources, keeping records of well-related materials, et cetera. And 48% installed treatment systems. So there were limitations to this study. It was a small sample size of the people the 405 people that I sent information out to. It wasn't a terrible response rate, but of course 1 million well owners in Oregon, not a huge representation of all of those people. Of course, there was response bias present. We find this in some of our other programs as well, where people who are more engaged in OSU extension, or maybe they know about extension already, they're already kind of looking out for this, are more likely to respond and engage, which kind of makes it harder to reach out to those people who maybe are a little bit more hesitant, maybe have some kind of fears when it comes to letting people test their water, all that stuff. It was also all self-reported data, so I wasn't, going out and checking how many times people were pumping or testing or anything like that. So, people could have over or underreported their behaviors, probably overreported, just kind of telling us maybe what we want to hear. It was also a short-term focus. I would have loved to do this over kind of a longitudinal. A lot of these changes take time, when people will go to the class and within, a month or 2 or 3 or 6, they might not go pump their septic system or test their water, but those are maybe changes that they take over a longer period of time just because of cost or, inconvenience, hassle, all that stuff. So I also asked people what kind of recommendations they had for us. The top ones were people requested more advanced course options. We do actually have more advanced course options available. We don't normally implement them as much because a lot of people are looking for that kind of basic, just make sure you test, please pump, all this stuff that people maybe don't know. They move onto the property and they have never had a well or septic before, or it's been a long time or something like that. A lot of people ask for hands-on learning. We do have, I know someone mentioned before, the little kind of fake well heads. We have one of those and we show those to people. And we also have one of the Enviroscapes and we bring that around as well. So we do have some hands-on stuff, but people of course would love, site visits, stuff like that. All of those are gonna, come with more funding, but and then as well as greater access to water testing. So we are doing that through this new program. People, of course, will always ask for, they want, a full panel of tests. A lot of people want testing for, the aesthetic things, the smell and sulfur, iron, all that stuff. But we don't focus on that because, not necessarily health risk there, but people would love that. And then people also ask for stronger post-class outreach. We do, send out emails. We have communication, with people all over a lot of different emails, social media, all that stuff. But, more engagement means more people, are going to be coming. So it's always good to increase that. We have to, of course, walk the line between, you know, not annoying people, but, and then expanded outreach to underrepresented groups, always an important thing to focus on. With this new program, or I guess this program that's ending, we were specifically doing like need-based. So we did kind of have that slightly like expanded outreach there, but it's always a good thing to focus on. And then, yeah, in conclusion, I didn't do like a pre and post test, so it's, you know, it's hard to say like, oh, this increased confidence, but people did report high confidence in well and septic management after the class. And then many people did say that they planned to test and maintain their systems more frequently, even though the kind of immediate action was moderate. Barriers like cost and perception definitely prevent people from taking action. A lot of people just kind of have the mentality, I heard someone else say, you know, hey, I've been drinking this water for 20 years, I'm not sick, I'm not dead, you know, all this stuff, or, oh, it smells good, it tastes good, it looks fine. And so a lot of these things there are systems that are out of sight, out of mind, so people don't think about it a lot, or people just assume that if they're not sick, if it looks good, it tastes good, then it's the best water. So just kind of making sure that people are aware that these things exist and aware of kind of the issues that can come with these contaminants in their water, then they'll be more likely to take action. And then more engagement and support can, of course, increase people's follow through. And I think that's it. Oh, okay, perfect. About 5 minutes? Oh, okay. Okay, perfect. So yeah, you know, so for the 3 parts per million, we do give people a bit of a range. When we do the nitrate screenings, we will we give people a little card that kind of breaks it down up to like 10 parts per million, and we say like 1 to 4 about is like what we say is you're probably like safe, and then we say like 4 to 7 is like has a potential for impact. So 5, I mean, probably is also kind of within that range. I know that when we've been doing our new testing program, we've been sending a publication on nitrate out to people who have, I think it's like 3.5 is what we're using and like above. So I think we're, you know, trying to kind of be more on like the safe side than, you know, sorry side, of course. I did not actually, let's see, sorry, I should be reading the questions. Did you survey the reasoning why participants chose not to test? I didn't actually. That would be a great thing to ask people. There were a lot of, when I gave this, you know, presentation to like my undergraduate thesis committee and everything, there were definitely a lot of questions that I was like, you know, that is a great question and I should definitely ask that. We are developing an evaluation as part of the testing program that's ending and to evaluate those classes. And so I am going to be like adapting the questions that I used for this survey for those, and definitely that is actually something I will probably write down, because from my personal experience, a lot of times when people choose not to test, it's either like, you know, kind of a mistrust. I know even for like the nitrate screenings that we do in the community, like we don't require any like information written down or anything like that. We ask for, you know, people to write down a little bit of stuff so that way the county knows what we're doing, and, you know, we have proof that we're actually out here testing people. But I know a lot of people will like come up and ask like, okay, if mine tests positive for nitrate, are you gonna come to my well and like prevent me from drinking my water? And so I always, you know, tell them that of course we're not going to do that. You know, no one really has the funds or, you know, workforce to do that anyway. But yeah, so I think a lot of it's mistrust or cost. It is expensive. From what I remember, I feel like for us it's been like $80 to like $130 for all these tests now. But I think for individuals it's probably higher than that, especially if they're doing a larger portion. Plans to expand, yes, there is. So my supervisor is actually going to be talking tomorrow, and she would know way more in depth about this than I do. But we went to Salem and presented, and she presented on the floor. And there's a bill that is planning to expand this program, but as of right now, I don't think that we have heard anything. So I don't know how it will go. Fingers crossed. Because yeah, there isn't a ton of us in this program. And so it is certainly very fun for me to drive to all these different parts of Oregon and see all these different things, but it is definitely a lot of trekking around. Yes, that is good. So we do, oh, sorry, I'm still not reading the questions. Do you encourage homeowners to get a certified lab test after your testing events if the results exceed 10 milligrams per liter? Yes, so we kind of just say over 10, because our test is pretty like good up to 10. So over 10, we're kind of like, you've exceeded it, you really should like install filtration. So when I'm talking with people, that's mostly what I'll recommend, is I'll just recommend like people install some sort of filtration. But we do also provide a list of certified labs. We of course aren't, allowed to suggest any one over another, but we provide a list of labs, and I do like always recommend, people go to a certified lab, but a lot of times when people are coming to us, it's because they don't want to pay for the certified labs, so they're not necessarily gonna kind of take that next step. Okay, do you have people bring containers of their water to farmers markets for nitrate screenings, or do they give them a bottle for testing? Either way, how do you advertise that service? So we actually do both. When we are doing these screenings, we make little bags that have a little bottle in them. And I'm pretty sure it's not any like thing special. It's, I think, a bottle that we got for free from another program. So just a little like reusing there. And then on that little bag, we have a list of all of our extension offices. And at each of our extension offices, people can take their sample in, and each of the extension offices has one of those little screening kits that I showed you guys from the farmers market. So each of the surrounding extension offices, not across the state, but each of the surrounding extension offices has one of those testing kits. So we give those bottles out. People can bring them to the farmers markets. People can bring them to the extension offices. They can get that quick nitrate test done there. We also do, when we advertise, we say half a cup of water in a clean container. Most people use like a ball jar, like a canning jar, and that's great. People also use water bottles. I've had just a cup with like cling wrap over the top. There's a lot of variety. People get really creative, and it doesn't really matter as long as it's like a clean container. And when we advertise that service, we do a lot of postcard mailings, as I said before. We have access to the tax assessor list, and so we send out all these postcards. We make a postcard for every farmers market we go to, every fair we go to, and we send them out to everyone kind of in the area that we're going to be targeting. And that gets a lot of engagement. A lot of people will bring their postcard to the farmers market, and so I know that they're at least going to someone. And then, as I said before, we do the Facebook. We advertise on Facebook as well, and that's a pretty good way to get the word out about that. We've done some other newsletters and stuff like that, but that's definitely less common. Let's see, what resources are there for homeowners wanting to test their water in rural counties? Is there a list of where they can have their water tested? How much does it cost? Yeah, so I guess I kind of went over that a little bit. Unfortunately, in like we don't do a lot of work out in like the kind of like more eastern Oregon. And I was just talking to my supervisor, and I think there aren't really any labs out there. So it's kind of like unfortunate. I think she was saying that some people like might need to like drive up to like 8 hours to get to a lab, and of course we don't like stretch out there. So this is kind of where being statewide would be really wonderful, because then we would have more of that reach. So really the list would just be any of those like certified labs. That would be kind of where we would recommend people take their water. But of course, if they are really, really rural, then it's going to be a pretty far trek to get there. And in terms of cost, it really depends on what you're testing for. I do think that it generally, if you're testing for only like a limited number of things, it's like 100, 200, but I think for those larger tests, it can be more like 500. I know people have told me before when I've been out to their house, they've been like, yeah, I did a test before, it was like $1,000. So I think it's probably more of those, like if you're doing kind of a full panel of tests, water hardness, pH, all that kind of stuff, it's gonna be, much more costly, but it really does depend on what you are testing for.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.